Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking, and as always, great to have you along for another episode of Dream Fights. Really look forward to this one each week. This is where we pit two fighters from different eras, sometimes maybe the same era, but never actually fought each other. And we break it all down, reveal who we think wins and why. And great to have my co-host for this week's episode. I'm referring to Mike Altamura. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm great. Looking forward to talking and thinking over this contest because it's a real interesting blend of styles.
Oh, it is. Look, I've got to admit, it's not going to be the most graceful fight. Certainly not the biggest dream fight we've ever had. It's more of an entertainment thing. As I said in the last episode, sometimes you just got to have just throw the styles together. I think I did it a few months back when I did Ricky Hatton and Vinny Pazienza. Certainly not all-time greats, but, the styles themselves. So in this episode, I think one thing is guaranteed: you will see fireworks. And, of course, the fight I'm referring to is Deontay Wilder, the Brown Bomber, up against James BONECRUSHER Smith. So one thing, Mike, if you're not, obviously, people out there watching aren't familiar with it, BONECRUSHER Smith, we'll go through his record now at the moment. One of the biggest and entertaining, most punches of all time in the heavyweight division. Not the most graceful. Didn't have the greatest record, but he fought all the best fighters out there and gave them all hell. And Deontay Wilder, same thing. Not the most graceful guy on the planet, but never fails to disappoint as far as entertainment goes.
Well, and the other thing to look at with both guys too is that even though Deontay Wilder was an Olympic bronze medalist at 91 kilograms, he had quite a limited amateur career, and BONECRUSHER Smith was similar. BONECRUSHER had under 30 amateur fights. And so early on the job in the pros with BONECRUSHER, he incurred a couple losses. He built well. He had the loss to Holmes, and then he lost to the likes of Marvis Fraser and David Bay and guys like that who were more credentialed amateurs. But he was always dangerous. With Marvis Fraser, he near stopped Fraser late in the fight. You always seen that danger. You always seen he was a hellacious puncher. But he was never going to be the guy that was protected by the promoters. Deontay Wilder, on the other hand, Olympic medal was really his saving grace. So he turned professional and he landed in the hands of Shally Finkel, who's probably the greatest manager of this generation of fighters. And Shally always made his name of taking on Olympic fighters and developing them. Out of the 84 Olympics, he signed most of the team. But amongst his key clients, you got Evander Holyfield, you've got Pernell Whitaker, Maldrick Taylor. He had
Mark
the best
Breland.
of that bunch. Yeah, Mark Breland. Of course, he had Tyrell Biggs, the heavyweight.
Biggs, yeah.
And later on, he managed Mike Tyson for a portion of his career.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
Shally, yeah, so like Lennox Lewis fight and things of that nature. Shally always knew that the money's in the heavyweights. So when he signed Deontay Wilder, they essentially gave themselves 20 to 25 fights against limited tier opposition to build and develop him. And, of course, like you just said, Mark Breland, he brought Mark Breland back as a trainer to work with Deontay Wilder. So Breland was two-division champ, right, as a professional, but still considered, isn't it crazy, two-division champ and still considered to be a disappointment in the pros.
Olympic gold medalist, 110-1, yep.
Yeah, such was his credentials as an amateur, but he brought him along. Breland was a very educated fighter off the left hand, the left side, very good jab. Brought him in to nurture and develop Deontay Wilder. And realistically, the first fight Deontay Wilder really stepped up and fought was against Berman Stavern for the WBC world title. Everything else was manufactured. So it's the near opposite to BONECRUSHER, who BONECRUSHER was put in some pretty tough fights early career.
He was, yeah.
Actually I almost overlooked this, sorry. So he got stopped early career. Then he fought, what's the kid's name? McDonald. Is it Chris McDonald, I think? You have to bring up the record.
Yeah, okay.
But there was a series in the United States. So there had been the absence of the 1980 Olympic team because of the US boycott. So on mainstream TV, they were running Tomorrow's Heroes. And McDonald was one of the key kids they were pushing. BONECRUSHER won a shock decision over him, and then that built some career momentum. And he got to the point that he earned the opportunity then to fight for the title. But, he wasn't without his pitfalls early in career either. You know,
Because he had this habit of just pulling out wins when he wasn't supposed to, didn't he?
yeah, I'm just bringing up the record here, so I want to give you, I want to give you a bit of context. I should have had it up before.
All right. Well, while you're doing that, I'm just going to bring up the poll from our last dream fight. It was fighting Harada and Naoya Inoue. No surprise here. 67% for Inoue or Inui, however you want to pronounce it, and only 33% for fighting Harada. I've got a bit of suspicion that maybe it's because people don't know a lot about fighting Harada, obviously, but 67 to 33.
Yeah, we're not too opposed to that. Yeah. We're okay. We're okay with that. I think that we were 3-0 on the panel of Inoue, but respectfully to Harada, we all figured it was going to be a very challenging bout.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I've got BONECRUSHER Smith's record here. So on debut, they put him in with James Broad.
Yep.
Who would have been on the US Olympic team in 80, and he gets knocked out in 4 rounds.
Why are you doing that? So, I'll bring up his record here. Keep going. Yep. Or some of his things there. Yep.
So then from there, at 3-1, right? At 0-1, he beats Ricky Parkey, who's a future top-tier cruiserweight. At 3-1, he upsets Chris McDonald, and that really starts to build his career momentum. So from there, his crowning grace on the way up is one of the key wins you got there, which is the shock KO in the 10th of Frank Bruno, where he pretty much did nothing for 8 rounds and then heated up the 9th and then iced Bruno with one of the most sizzling, right here it is, rather than me speaking of it, let's just see it, one of the most sizzling finishes you ever see.
Yeah. Poor old Frank, he was he just didn't know how to defend, did he? He didn't know how to clinch or anything when he got hurt.
Yeah, and coupled with stamina problems as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at that hook. And here it is. Like, credit to Bruno's chin. Bang, that final hook. Oh, my gosh. So here is, anyways, 1984. He lands his opportunity against 45-0 Larry Holmes.
Yeah.
And he got stopped in the 12th round here, but he actually acquitted himself quite well. He was able to tag.
Too.
Yeah, he was able to tag Holmes quite clean throughout the fight. But the problem is he just kind of, after that, sputtered out of control.
Well, sorry, just on the Holmes fight. Sorry to cut you off. On the Holmes fight, though, he had Holmes gone. He hit him. He had him cut. Yeah. He had him rocked, and he hit him with a right hand. I think might have been the middle rounds, and Holmes was in all sorts of trouble. He had to hang on, and of course the cut happened, and Holmes, being the champion that he is, got him out of there. But that was a real scare for Holmes.
But BONECRUSHER had that habit of doing that. The problem is that he just, he's slower than molasses,
Yeah.
And then, so anyways, I said before he lost to Bay, that should have been Tony Tubbs. So he's just he loses to Holmes, loses to Tubbs. And from then, he's just really, on all these events, especially amongst the Don King stable, win-loss, get him thrown in with the top-tier guys until he finally builds a bit of momentum. And that, of course, lands him a shock rematch with Tim Witherspoon for the WBA heavyweight world title at just the right time.
I was going to say, he was a late replacement for that fight too, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. So comes in for that bout, and look, again, Witherspoon had previously beaten him quite comfortably over 12 rounds, and Witherspoon can hit you with every excuse, but at the end of the day, BONECRUSHER dismantled him, caught him, tagged him early, and got him out of there in round 1. So you've got to give the man credit.
Yeah, and you do, and you can see some of the fights. This is the Razor Ruddock one, the Witherspoon one was before that, but he just had this habit of just pulling out the wins, and you said about the Tim Witherspoon fight, being the late replacement. I think that was at Madison Square Garden as well, and he just come out with absolutely nothing to lose. He just get right from the word bell. There's no feeling out, and I think he caught Witherspoon completely unawares, and obviously he wasn't fit either. You could see he was carrying a fair bit of weight. Got the world title fight. The one thing I will say that was just disappointing for BONECRUSHER was when he got the Tyson fight, the massive fight, unification fight. Everyone gave him a chance. And it was the first time I've ever seen him just go completely into his shell, and he didn't even try and win. That was a shame.
He did nothing until the final 30 seconds, and when he finally opened up in the final 30 seconds, he didn't win the exchange, but at least he drew Tyson into the firefight that he needed it to be. Yeah. But it was disappointing to watch. And just to add some more light to the story, so he had replaced the man that had conquered him, Tony Tubbs.
Yep.
Last minute in that bout for Witherspoon, but the controversy was that Don King's side, keeping in mind that Smith was, of course, managed by Don King's son, Carl. They had known that basically Tubbs was unable to fight from 6-7 weeks out, but only told Witherspoon a couple of weeks out from the belt.
Of course. Yep. But look, just one of those real honest fighters, and you need them, don't you? Because you need these types of fighters for the young upstarts to come and fight. The problem is sometimes you would just turn up, probably like a Bert Cooper. He would just turn up and just put all the plans, just obliterate all the best laid plans, because he definitely caused some upsets in his time.
Oh, definitely. And you can see why he has the record he had, where he lost quite a few fights, either late stoppage or got out-hustled on points, because he's pretty slow. He has quite a pedestrian work rate, unless he has you in a spot of danger. But he has a sledgehammer right hand that can get him out. And probably, you've seen it right there, probably BONECRUSHER's best attribute in my book is he has a laser-sharp left hook. He just hardly ever threw it.
It's always just the right hand. But the thing with him too, like a lot of fighters know, and I just mentioned Bert Cooper was one of them, but it just, if you got the right BONECRUSHER that would turn up, anything was possible, because you could get the one that turned up who just went through the motions and just got beat on points by one of these young up-and-comers, or then you get the BONECRUSHER that would turn up who meant business, and as I've said before, the upsets were there, but you can just see this sort of energy you can see here on screen compared to when he fought Tyson and barely threw a punch for 11 and a half rounds.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just a situation where on the grandest stage of all, he froze. He's apprehensive. Maybe he was worrying about the counter-punching of Tyson, so it was just easier for him to go into a shell. But what was interesting in that bout is, although Tyson was out working and out hustling him, Tyson didn't open up too much either.
No, he didn't.
He just did enough to bank the round. So that shows you that they had maybe their own reservations about getting drawn into a fight with BONECRUSHER.
Yeah, I remember the build-up to that fight. It was massive because it was coming off, obviously, his fight with Witherspoon. Tyson was coming off the Berbick fight too. So it was meant to be this, the irresistible force versus the immovable object type of fight. But it was really probably the most disappointing heavyweight fight, if not one of the normal fights or any division fights I've ever seen. It was complete bore fest, or snore fest as they call it, and that was his last big opportunity after that. So let's get on to his opponent, Deontay Wilder, 42-2-1, 41 KOs if you will. Won the WBC heavyweight title in 2015, 10 successful defences. You can see the quality of opposition there probably isn't as good as some of the other heavyweight champions in history, but you can see there, beat Bermane Stavern twice, Luis Ortiz twice, had the draw with Fury. I've just put in Gerald Washington in there as well, just to throw another one in there, but he's one of those guys, isn't he? I'll just get rid of that there. He's one of those fighters, isn't he, Mike, that I personally think that he's probably one of the most, I'm trying to be nice, least skilled heavyweight champions that I've ever seen. But when you've got a right hand like he has, then who needs skill?
Yeah, he's probably one of the biggest raw punchers in boxing history too. So that's kind of the intangible that he brings to the table. There's some similarities actually between him and BONECRUSHER when we talk about their punching power from like angles and places that you generally wouldn't expect it. Wilder probably's got more of a wind-up with his work.
Yeah.
But, like he could just be cruising, like especially here against this man with Luis Ortiz, especially their first fight. Lackluster pace, getting out hustled, and then bang, it's just like detonation out of left field. And he's got the ability to do that. There's Bermane Stavern getting deposited to the canvas.
Yeah, first round, yeah.
The thing is, about Wilder, that you got to give the guy credit. He might not have the most educated jab or be the most orthodox fighter in the world, but he's going to fight you till the absolute death. That's a guarantee.
Yeah, and he's just one of those fighters who are just so dangerous. In a 12-round fight, as the Fury fight showed there, he could really be outboxed for the majority of the fight, and all it takes is one big punch. You can see there, actually, he thought it was all over in that fight, by the way. You can see that. He didn't realise that Fury was about to get up, and you can see the look at his face. Geez, thinking, I'm not sure I can beat this guy. But look, I think he's been obviously brought along really, really well. I think you said at the start he'd had those 20-25 fights that he'd really just built up the reputation. Probably like what happened to Tyson back in the day. Got his chance and very, very marketable. And, he plays up to it as well. But as far as I said at the start, technique goes, probably not the most talented fighter that's ever graced the heavyweight division.
No, but he has kind of like an awkward, uncoordinated strength. It's just, you know yourself as a fighter, Lyndon, it's the punches you don't see coming that hurt you. And it's hard to see some of Wilder's punches coming because they're from such unconventional angles, which I think is one of his biggest traits. But definitely, like, there's a few more great wins left in the tank for him. So maybe our perception of him will change with a few more years. But I think that he's always going to just be remembered as a raw, crude, fun-punching heavyweight with not, like you said, not the greatest skill in the world, but with absolute dynamite in both hands.
Well, I think the thing that's actually benefited Deontay Wilder as well is that he was probably the champion in the era. I know Fury come later and Joshua and obviously Usyk's come now, but he was in the era where the competition probably wasn't around to expose him that it did later in his career. I'm saying later in his career, like you said, he's still got plenty of fight left in him, but there wasn't the fury around when he's knocking these guys out, and when they did come around, they did expose him, especially Fury. Not to say he couldn't beat those guys, but I think those 10 successful defences, probably the softest 10 successful defences of the heavyweight title I think there's ever been in history.
Yeah, he was largely manufactured because he was on the PBC side of the fence, and of course you had Joshua with Matchroom, you had the likes of Fury with Top Rank, and PBC weren't really too open to doing business with Matchroom. It was only really Fury where they thought they were catching him at the right time that they went into that business arrangement.
You know he's got some power when the fighters go down and convulse on the floor. That's when you know the guy can punch. But I see lately he's obviously got a fight coming up. He's trying to develop the left hook as well. It's not looking too flush at the moment, I've got to say. But geez, if he perfects that, we might have a pretty deadly fight on our hands.
Look, his slapping left hook is lethal. That's the thing. Like maybe if he was hitting a heavy bag, 1 out of 10 would land clean, but if you're sitting in center ring with him and he catches you with one, it's lights out. Like it's incredible what kind of power he can generate from such unorthodox angles. And you can look at him and say that any good technician, boxing-wise, historically, has the ability to beat him 12 rounds to 0 or break him down the same way that Tyson Fury did. But that said, look at, he had Fury down, 4 times in 3 fights?
Yeah.
So he possesses a hell of a lot of power.
And it's not probably a little bit like the Tyson era as well. They don't just go down. He just pretty much splatters them all over the canvas, and that's again what makes him very, very entertaining. So, all right, mate. Well, that gets us to the most important part of the night, mate. Who wins and why? I think one thing that's guaranteed that there's going to be fireworks, as I said at the start of the show, and it might become who lands first. But what do you think? Who wins and why?
I think if you look at Wilder's career, there's only one fight that he stuck to a game plan behind the jab, and that was the Berman-Stavern bout, and that's because Stavern pretty much just tucked up defensively, high-guarded, and had a very low punch output, and Wilder just cruised to a 12-round decision. But I think that BONECRUSHER, seeing how available he is to hit, will open up in this fight and be a lot more aggressive, at least a lot more aggressive than the version that fought Tyson. This is the kind of fight I look at, and I expect both men on the canvas. I'll be disappointed if there's not multiple knockdowns. But I just look at, historically, who was a bit grittier and who found a way when the deck was stacked against them. And there's only one example in BONECRUSHER's career, which was really the Frank Bruno bout. And Frank had a history of tossing away the untossable, so to speak.
Yep.
Whereas Wilder, you could say, with Ortiz, technically pulled 2 fights out of the fire. Even with Gerald Washington, after 4 or 5 rounds, it wasn't really going his way. Bang, 1 punch, he turns it. I just think that it's a kind of fight. I could flip-flop on it, but I just see Wilder as the last man standing by late-round knockout in a scrappy, fun-filled heavyweight fight, which is everything we would be hoping for.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. As I said, I made no bones about it. We're not talking Ali Fraser here. This is just an entertaining fight where 2 guys with limited ability, with massive punches, can get it on and just give us an entertaining fight. Look, I look a little bit towards the Razor Ruddock fight as a bit of a way I think this would go. I think BONECRUSHER would give Wilder problems early. I don't think he might get caught, but I think he'd have the ability to sort of take it early. He had a pretty good chin, did BONECRUSHER. I think he would. He had okay boxing skills, and Wilder has none. So I think he might go okay for the first 4, 5, or 6 rounds. I just think as it went on, I just think Wilder would eventually catch him. It wouldn't be the most graceful fight of all time. It definitely wouldn't be a graceful punch. It would just be one out the blue. But I think as BONECRUSHER got more and more fatigued as the fight went on, Wilder would get fatigued as well. He has a habit of that, but at least he'd have the edging power. And I just think maybe 7th, 8th, 9th round, I think he would land a big right hand and get BONECRUSHER out of there. But it would be entertaining while it lasted. And I'm sure BONECRUSHER would probably get up and probably go again and probably get dropped again. That's just the type of fighter he was. But I think it just purely come down to the edging power, that one punch knockout power that Wilder has. Whereas, we've lost Mike there for a sec. Yeah, so we're back. Sorry, I lost you there. But, yeah, so look, end of the day, it would be a very entertaining fight. I think the edging power, as I said, would be the difference in the fight. And I think the crowd would be happy. But, I don't think to go down the annals of boxing history is one of the classics, but there'd be fireworks anyway. And sometimes you just need a good scrap between two guys that can punch and have a crack, if you ask me. So, and that's what this segment's for. So, mate, that's it for this one. Wilder, I think KO was both of us over BONECRUSHER. So
late round. Yeah, late round.
We're off for a couple of weeks. We're away. Got a little bit on. Have you had a little bit of think about your fight, or you want to surprise us next time?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a good think. Yep. I need to know if Tassie's going to be on the program too, so I can pick one that puts him in an uncomfortable situation. He seems to dodge the ones that place him in uncomfortable situations.
He does, where he might have a bit of a vested interest in the combatants. Yes, that's definitely. But, mate, look, we've just got to put it out there. He will be on. I'll make sure he's on. And I'm sure whoever you go with, it'll be a ripper, mate. We probably need a more classic type of dream fight after this one. As I said, make no bones about it. It wasn't, an all-time great fight, but just an entertaining one. So, mate, look forward to that. Have a good break over the next couple of weeks. I think you're with Jack Bowen fighting. I think he's fighting next week, is he?
Yeah, next Thursday night in Brisbane. So all right, can't wait. Should be a good showcase for him.
Yeah, sounds good, mate. Oh, can't wait to see him on the bigger shows. It'd be great for him. So plenty of talent there. So, mate, thanks again for coming on. Another great episode. We'll have Tassie for the next show, and look forward to seeing who your fight will be then. So if you're out there, stay tuned, and have any requests, by the way, send them in, and we'll look at getting them on as well. So thanks, mate. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.